What's up, my Choombas? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is TytheTrainer. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. In this video, we're going to be covering another movement technique. Today, we're going to be going over the row. And more specifically, we're not going over a certain type of row. This is just going to be the general guidelines that you can use for most type of rows. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Before we get fully started, let's take a look at the muscles completing the actions in the row. To start, shoulder extension will be handled by the lats and somewhat of the long head of the triceps. Horizontal abduction will be handled by our posterior deltoid. The scapular retraction component of the row will be handled mostly by our mid-traps and our rhomboids. Depending on the row variant you complete, there could be an isometric lumbar extension contraction, which would be handled by your erector spinae. And lastly, the elbow flexion component of our row movements will be handled by the good old biceps. Okay, the first row variant I'm going to be showing here is a seated cable row. The first thing we want to ensure we do is utilize a shoulder width grip. Whether you have handles like myself, or you have some sort of straight bar attached to a cable, shoulder width grip is perfect for rowing techniques. The second thing we want to do, and this will depend on the equipment you are working with, but you want to choose a comfortable grip, whether that be pronated, palms facing down, neutral, palms facing each other, or supinated, palms facing up. Keeping your back straight, your chest nice and proud, you want to start in slight scapular protraction, slightly rounded shoulders, and you want to engage each rep via the scapula. So you notice how I drive through my scapula by squeezing it together, and then follow through with the elbows. At the top part of the movement, our arms should travel roughly between 45 to 65 degrees, which is a safe and good angle for force production. Another thing to make note of, if your scapula and shoulders make a nice A-frame, that is a solid row position. Let's take a look at a bent over variant of the row. This is a pendule row, but the setup is the exact same. The only difference in our setup here is we have to hinge at the hip with a slight anterior pelvic tilt, but everything in the movement is the same. Driving through the scapula, following with the elbows, the top part of the movement, we have a nice 90-degree angle from shoulder to elbow, and a solid A-frame. Another thing we can add that I didn't mention in the seated cable variant is we can touch the equipment to our chest at the top part of the movement and control the eccentric or the lowering phase back to the start position. And lastly, guys, I just wanted to showcase a couple different rows just to show not the complexity, but the variety you really have when it comes to this movement. You can use dumbbells, kettlebells, barbells, cables, whatever you really have access to, you can row with. So the final two examples, one is the tripod row, utilizing a bench and a set of dumbbells or kettlebells, and the classic bent over barbell row. Apply all the techniques I showed here today, and you will be maximizing your progress with rows. Alright, my Choombas, that is it for the rowing technique. As always, before I get out of here, I'm just going to go over a couple errors that I typically see as a personal trainer. So the first one is loading them too heavily. This is a pretty common one in literally every how-to guide I've made so far. And I know what you're thinking, but Ty, it's a pulling movement. Sometimes you gotta cheat so you can control the eccentric. And yes, I totally agree with that. That's fine. But what I mean is when you load it too heavy off the get-go, and there is no good technique on the concentric or the eccentric. So that is mistake number one. The second one is more for the bent over variance, where it kind of turns into more of a hip drive. So, as opposed to rowing with your back, you see people kind of swing the bar up with their hips, and it's just, a form of cheating, and they're not going to get the max benefit from the row if they just use their back. And the last one I see a lot is shrugging. So there are variants of rows, don't get me wrong, where the traps have to take over to shrug, but the rows that I'm talking about today are all scapula driven, mid-back muscles. So if you ever find when you're rowing that your shoulders are coming up too much, try to depress them and get more retraction in the scapula to maximize the movement. So, thank you guys again for watching. Please like and subscribe. Tell your friends about me. Tell your family about me. And I'll see you, Chooms, in the next video.